Hi guys! So I have three things to tell you about in this lecture. Your two reading assignments for the week and then your first test. So this week you're finishing Middlesex. Maybe you've already finished it. Uh, you'll get more about Cal slash Calliope in the second half of the novel than you got in the first half. A lot of you noticed that the first half of the book focuses heavily on the extended family and the history of the family. Before Cal slash Calliope's birth, although we do get some kind of we get some of Cal's perspective as an adult man in the book. We get a little bit of stuff about his life as an adult man, but we don't get a lot about Calliope's childhood. You'll get that in the second half of the novel, which you'll see if you haven't read it yet. So in the second half of the book, mostly we get a lot about it. Basically, book 3, which is the beginning of the second half of the novel, begins with Calliope's birth. And then we get a lot of information about Calliope as a little girl, kind of getting older. And then there's this like medical event that forces her to go to the hospital. Then she finds out basically that she's biologically male. And then we get stuff about her as an adult man again. And we get more about kind of her decision to not identify as a her anymore and to kind of like live as a man, basically, because he's biologically male. Oh my gosh, I'm struggling with the pronouns here. He's a biological man, and so he's going to live as one. You know if you've read the book. My awkwardness shouldn't throw you off too much. This week's discussion, which is due Thursday, asks you to consider the ways that Cal slash Calliope, I'm tired of saying that, but I don't know how else to say it, changes throughout the book, as this is a Bildungsroman. It's a book about it's a coming of age story about a child becoming an adult, basically, or a person who's young growing up. And so we get stuff about like the transition from living as a woman to living as a man, living as a little girl to living as a male. But we also get a lot of stuff just about like a person growing up. And so this week I want you to consider, like, is the central, like, most important thing about the book about the fact that this person thinks that she's female and then realizes that he's male, or is the most important thing something else? Like, is there some kind of a more universal lesson that we can learn from this novel? Are there things that Cal learns about himself that are kind of universal to growing up and coming of age? There isn't really a right or a wrong answer here. I'm just interested to hear what you all think about this. So anyway, you can check out the discussion question for the week. The discussion should be open. The questions should be up. Chapter 3 of Composing Gender is something that you're also reading this week. And in the discussion forum for the week, since you only had one chapter from this book this week, I asked a question about every single essay. And you don't have to answer all of them unless you want to. The directions just tell you to answer 2 of them. So you can pick the 2 essays that you like the best, or the shortest ones, or whatever. But I just went ahead and wrote a question about all of them. And I'll just give you a rundown on what they're about in case you haven't checked them out yet, or if you have and you were like, what did I just read or something. So the first thing in chapter 3 is an excerpt from this book called Prom Night, Youth, Schools, and Popular Culture. And it's sort of about the narrative that we have around prom in this country and the way that it's kind of become the site of like female fantasy. So girls dress up in these princess dresses and spend hours doing their hair, and there's all this stuff that goes into it. And anyway, it's kind of an interesting piece of cultural criticism about prom and the rituals surrounding it. Then after that, there's an essay called The Rights of Almost Men, Binge Drinking, Fraternity Hazing, and the Elephant Walk. Ooh, after you read this, you'll learn what that is if you didn't already know. I didn't know until I read this. So this is about mostly like fraternity pledges, but it's also just kind of about rites, I guess, rites of passage that would a man would have to go through when transitioning from boyhood to manhood. And the essay focuses on the fact that like some cultures have they have these rites of passage that are like everyone has to go through them. So in order to become a man, you have to go through this ritual, and then, oh, now you've passed the test and you're a man or something, and then you're a man forever and it's never questioned. But in our country, Michael Kimmel argues, we don't really have those. And so men are always having to prove that they're men, basically. At every turn, they're always kind of having their masculinity questioned or their manhood questioned. And they're always having to like prove it through fighting or binge drinking or whatever. And he's focusing on fraternity hazing and fraternity rituals as a way to, rituals probably isn't the right word. I think he draws a distinction between rituals and rites of passage. Anyway, he's focusing on this to kind of show that there are these really kind of gory and terrifying things that men are asked to do when they pledge to a fraternity to prove their manhood, but that then they still have to continue to prove their manhood even after they're done being in the fraternity. I mean, but there's a lot more to the essay too. I find it interesting. I hope you find it interesting too. After that, there's this essay by Jacqueline Geller called Undercover at the Bloomingdale's Registry. And basically, Jacqueline Geller, this writer, pretends that she's getting married and goes to Bloomingdale, which is this great big huge department store. I think it's a bigger deal on the East Coast. Does it even exist anymore? Who knows in this day and age, but it did when she wrote it. I think it exists. So Bloomingdale's. She goes to Bloomingdale's and she creates a wedding registry and pretends that she's getting married to sort of like get the experience of registering for, what are they called? Like wedding presents. You know how you create a wedding registry. She wants to like write about this. And so she's doing this piece of cultural criticism basically about the whole experience that brides go through before the wedding of like, you know, trying to pick out furniture and trying to pick out dishes and trying to have the perfect wedding and trying to lump this all in with love and marriage and everything. And so this is kind of like the first essay. It's a piece of cultural criticism, but it's about rituals surrounding getting ready for a wedding, specifically regarding women. And then at the end of the essay, she ends up arguing that we should have this sort of alternative ritual to a wedding where every woman when she's 25 gets this party and gets a bunch of presents to like get her started in life, like dishes and stuff like that, but that it's not connected to like finding a mate or reproducing or becoming coupled. And she's arguing that this should replace weddings. I'm interested to hear what you all think of that. One of the questions I wrote this week in the discussion forum is about that, because I was like, I wonder what everybody's take on this would be. Then after that, there's an article called Good Girls Go Bad for a Day by Stephanie Rosenblum. This is about Halloween costumes and the kind of, you know, the thing that we all hear about how girls dress up as sluts on Halloween. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. I'm not saying that they do, but everybody talks about it all the time. It's like a thing. So she's writing about that phenomenon, basically, that women wear revealing Halloween costumes. And, you know, they're not just like a pirate. They're like a sexy pirate. They're not just a princess. They're a sexy princess. And so she's writing about that and like unpacking it and kind of wrestling with what it means and whether it's empowering or not. I had fun reading this. Joseph Zosky, I think I'm saying his last name correctly, wrote an essay that's last in this section called Male Circumcision, a Gender Perspective. And this one, I don't know if you guys have thought about this before. I've thought about it before, and this article I thought was well done and interesting. It focuses on this widespread practice in this country of circumcising male infants, and the extent to which we have this like double standard, he thinks, in our country about the way we talk about male circumcision and the way we talk about female circumcision. So in our country, we refer to female circumcision as female genital mutilation, and it's considered this like taboo thing that if we even hear that someone in another country practices it or something, or someone has been through it, it's a big deal. It makes the news. It's all over the place. But male circumcision is kind of just, it happens all the time. We don't really question it, or a lot of us don't. So he's trying to like shed light on this because he sees it as this kind of horrible, traumatic, barbaric practice that he wishes would end. So again, no right or wrong answers there either, but this is an interesting essay. I hope you think so. So this discussion, I'm sure I already said, you'll see a bunch of questions. You only need to you only need to answer 2 of them. I even snuck a little video in there of something that, I don't know. I had fun with these questions. You'll see. Okay, onward. Test 1. Friday, you'll have test 1 due, but this isn't the kind of test that like you open it up and then you have an hour to complete it or something. I wouldn't even really call it a test, but I'm calling it one because I don't know what else to call it, and I don't know. Anyway, it's already up in the module. It's up for the entire week. You can look at it. You can spend as much time on it as you want. What I would do if I were you is read the test first before you do any of the work for the week, and that way you'll know what's on it. And then when you're reading stuff for the week, you'll kind of be able to have answers in mind for the test, and you can make your life easier. This is really more of a writing assignment. I mean, it's not something that's timed. It's not something that's, there are right or wrong answers, or I'm using some kind of Scantron thing to grade it. It's pretty much just a writing assignment, and you'll have the same kind of assignment every couple of weeks in the class. And every time you have another one of these, it'll just cover the stuff that we've read since the previous one. So this test has everything on it that we've read so far in the class. So there's a question in there about Judith Butler. There are questions about the Composing Gender book. There's a question or 2. I'm trying to remember. I think there are 2 questions about Middlesex. I tried to sort of keep it proportional to what we've read and how much of things we've read, but I mean, it's tough trying to cram everything into a test. But basically, I wanted to give you a chance to write about everything we've read, because I'm interested to see what you think of it. So I hope you have fun with the test. I mean, I hope it doesn't end up being something that's torturous. Pretty much what I'm expecting is that you answer all 4 questions, write about a half a page to a full page typed, single-spaced in response to each question. So you're writing 4 paragraphs, basically, 1 per question. And there are specific directions on the test for what my expectations are, but basically what I want you to do is to begin each paragraph, begin each answer with your thesis statement, which is an answer to the question that's kind of your own interpretation or your own response, and then use direct quotes from the piece that you're writing about in support of your answer, and use some analysis in support of your answer. So pretty much what you would do in an essay, except compressed. You don't need to write a full essay. Just begin with your thesis statement and then support it in a longish paragraph. I mean, if you write more than a page single-spaced, certainly that's okay, but I'm not expecting more than a page single-spaced. So you don't need to write like 4 full essays. You'll get 25 points for each answer, or 25 points are possible for each answer. Make sure not to plagiarize. It's easy on a test like this to like look things up and then stick what you looked up in your answer and forget to cite it. I mean, of course you can look things up if you want, but what I don't want to see is like you haven't read the stuff and then you've cited Shmoop or you've cited a study tool in place of reading the assignments. So read them yourself, analyze them yourself. If you have to look up a date or look up something and you think you should cite it, stick a citation in there. Whatever you do, don't copy things off the internet and stick them in your own writing, because if I catch you, you fail the class, it's terrible, it's humiliating. I don't think you would do that anyway because you've signed up for the class intentionally and it's an elective, but just be careful. That's all I'm saying. So upload your answers as a Word document to the test. I don't know if I want to call it a Dropbox, but the place where you turn the test in, where it says submit your test here, you can upload your test, just typed out answers as a Word document. If you don't have Word, you can get it or you can use it through the student portal through Grace Harbor College. So like, for example, I didn't buy Word, I downloaded it through the college's website. You can do the same thing. Word is really expensive, but don't try to upload some kind of other document like a Pages document or something. Even though I have a Mac and even though I'd be able to open it, SpeedGrader in Canvas won't show it to me in the same way that it would show me a Word document. So Word plays nicer with Canvas is my point there. If you have questions about that, you can ask me. So I would like to again make a plea that if you're doing this test, not if you're doing this test, when you're doing this test, why did I say if? Like it's an option. When you're doing this test, make sure that if you've got a question, don't save it till the last minute. I'm not going to be like waiting up until midnight to see if anybody has questions. I'll be in bed at like 9 o'clock because I'm an old lady. So try to like open it up and look at it and think about whether you've got questions in advance of the due date and due time. You'll have the whole week to think about this and work on it. So give yourself time to ask me questions. Make sure that you get them in, 24 hours before you're expecting them to be answered or before you need an answer. A lot of the time, as you probably have noticed, I give answers way before 24 hours have passed, unless I don't see the email that you've sent me or something, or it doesn't come through. I'll often respond within a few minutes. But if you're writing to me later in the evening or whatever, just make sure you give yourself that 24-hour cushion. So if you have questions about any materials this week, don't hesitate to shoot me a message. I'll try to respond quickly. I hope you're having fun with this class, even though it's turned into an online class, which is not what you all were intending to take. I'm still having fun with it. I'm still having fun reading along with you guys and writing questions and writing lectures and materials. So I hope it's going well.